As the daylight hours do increase, someday everything is gonna be smooth like a rhapsody. When I paint my masterpiece.
This little sketch box was a box that I used when I did my very first painting when I was 7. However, it was one of my grandfather's sketch boxes, and he lived with us during the Second World War, and he normally lived with his younger daughter and her husband, and he was doing work for the Army in Canada. So Papa came to live with us from about 1942 until the war was over. And so this was my Christmas present on my third Christmas. And it had some kind of half-used up tubes of paint in it and everything, and of course my mother wouldn't let me touch it. I was sitting by my bed on a dresser so I could see it every day, and I wasn't allowed to do anything with it until I took it to the ranch when I was 7. My cousin and I both did our first paintings on the same day. So I used this from that time. This is the sketch box I took with me on my bike, and this is, and I now have not used it for a number of years. This is a painting of the dairy building at the Piazzoni Ranch, and I painted on the back of the box when I was about maybe 14, 15 years old, maybe younger. It's not dated or anything, but it's got a nice little thing for the turpentine that clips on, and it's got I had just enough room in there for the standard palette that I use with the cadmium reds and the cadmium yellows, cobalt blue, and so forth. And so this, it's one of the few material objects I have that really has some meaning to me in a world that's filled with material objects. So it's quite an artifact.
Your grandfather had high hopes for you. 3 years old. You had 3 items before you drove a car. You had 3 items. Do you remember what they are?
3 items.
You've told me.
Before I drove a car?
Yeah.
I had a fishing rod, I had a paint box, and I had a bike.
That was your whole world, wasn't it?
That was my world, yeah. Well, I mean, if you stop and think about the average kids are after school or, playing baseball or doing whatever they did, I just took my bike and put the paint box, that little paint box there, and fishing rod, and just took off. And that's what I did. That's what I did over and over every day. And having seen nothing but my grandfather's paintings, that's all I had to go on. And so a lot of my early work, really so closely resembles his. It was a struggle for me to find out who I was. And it was very difficult, in fact. And when I got to be a little older, got to be a late teenager, for example, and had some mobility, had a car, and could go around to museums or galleries and things, and I begin to see other things. I found that I was affected by and became influenced by artists whose sensibility, you might say, was somewhat similar to my grandfather's. For example, there was an American painter named Albert Reiter that I had some affinity for, a very spiritual kind of thing. I love the work of James McNeill Whistler, particularly his landscapes, which were very soft, beautiful pictures. But it wasn't until I did not get to really start traveling until I was in my early 30s. It was the first time I ever got on an airplane and actually flew to New York City. And it was quite an experience. I'd never been out of California other than to drive to Montana. And I was 40 before I got to Europe. And but once the window began to open in my early 30s, and I saw in New York, of course, you have several stupendous museums. You also are only minutes away from Washington, D.C., or from Boston, so let's say, and you go to Washington, now you've got the Smithsonian, the National Gallery, and so forth and so on. And so the windows started to open for me, and other influences started to come in. I began to see how big the world was and how small I was, and it helped me to build on what I already had a solid foundation that I got from thank God that my grandfather was a really solid, great painter. But this, getting out in the world allowed me to expand and see other possibilities. And all of that together really produced what I am today. If you are a fisherman and you look at a river, what you're looking for is you are looking for the places that are of interest to you as a fisherman, which is only about 1% of the river. The other 99% of the river doesn't have any fish in it. And a person who doesn't have that ability to critically choose, they call it reading the river, will just walk up to the bank and throw the line out any old where and will not catch a fish. Well, it's a little bit the same thing in choosing, for me, in landscape painting, is that the landscape is ubiquitous. It's all around us, all the time, every day. Every time you turn your head, the trick is where's the kernel of the crux of something? Is it a moment during the day? Is it a moment in the morning? Is it a moment in the evening? It is a certain something that is like a pinpoint focus. And when I see that somewhere, and I can see it any day, everywhere I go, everywhere, I'm always looking, I'm always outside. And if there's a moment that crystallizes into something, as I said, there's something about that. I don't know what it is, but there's something about that. And then I kind of take a picture of it in my mind. And when I come in here, you'll notice there are no windows in here. The last thing I want in a painting studio is a window, be looking out the window and daydreaming. Now, what I have to do is I have to take that picture that I took in my brain and somehow get it out through the ends of my fingers onto this canvas. And in so doing, it is going to get transformed or warped through that whole process of coming in through the eyes and coming out through the fingers. And I'm going to try to recreate something of the essence of that kernel that I took a picture of. Now, I'm not really copying anything. I mean, I'm making up, because a painting has forms and rhythms and lines and colors and design and all these things which I'm going to invent. And but I'm inventing it. My map is in my brain. There's that kernel of the thing that I saw, and I don't know how else to explain it.